Morning, everyone. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Public Works for today, Friday, September 13th, 2019.
Commissioner Garcia, Cabello, James, Davis, and Caloza are present. President James, you do have a quorum. May we start with Bureau introductions, please, starting with Bureau of Street Services.
Good morning. Hector Banuelos, Streets LA.
Good morning. Hisang Kim, Bureau of Sanitation.
Good morning. Victor Tercios, Bureau of Street Lighting.
Good morning. Brad Jensen, Bureau of Engineering.
Good morning, Ted Jordan, Public Works General Counsel.
Fernando Campos, Executive Officer. President James, we did receive two speaker cards under general public comment. We have no commentary under the Neighborhood Council comment section. We did receive speaker cards on items number 1, 5, 8, and 10. In addition to that, on item number 5, we did receive a series of emails that have been printed out and will be distributed to all commissioners in the next few minutes.
Okay, just notice on number 5, we've already taken public comment on number 5. Happened when we were last here on that item. So the only parties that we will be hearing from will be the real parties in interest. So no public comment on number 5. That's already taken place. Agenda item, we have a supplemental agenda item number 13. There's been a request by the Bureau that we continue item 13 to Wednesday, September 25th. That's already on the agenda notice anyway. So without objection, we'll continue agenda item number 13 to September 25th. Agenda item number 12 is an authority for expenditure. State Water Resources Control Board, Sanitation, and the Office of Accounting are requesting board approval and an execution of an authority for expenditure in the amount of $675,000 for the encumbrance of funds to pay annual National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit fees as required by the California State Water Resources Control Board under the authority of the California Water Code Section 13260. The total anticipated fees for 2019-20 are $675,000. The authority is requested for this fiscal year, which is July 1, 2019 to June 30th, 2020, and the fund is from the Sewer Maintenance and Operation Fund. Sir Wythe King.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, President James, commissioners, bureau representatives, and our city attorney. My name is Sarah Wath-Kang, and I'm a process control engineer for the Hyperion Water Reclamation Plant. As President James has mentioned, this is a request for the encumbrance of funds to pay the annual National Pollutant Discharge Elimination Systems, or NPDS, permit fees for the Hyperion Water Reclamation Plant. As a brief background, Hyperion treats about 260 million gallons per day of wastewater, and most of the treated water is discharged through the 5-mile outfall into Santa Monica Bay. The NPDS permit that is issued by the State Water Regional Control Board allows Hyperion to discharge the treated water to the Santa Monica Bay, and each fiscal year, the City of Los Angeles is required to pay Hyperion's NPDS permit fees. And as mentioned, the anticipated fees for fiscal year 2019 to 2020 are $675,000, and this authority is requested for the period of July 1st of 2019 through June 30th of 2020.
Thank you, sir. Any questions as we pay our bills for the State Water Resources Control Board? Commissioner Cabello's made a motion. I'll second. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 12. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Have a nice weekend. Any issue sending number 12 forthwith? We will send number 12 forthwith. Agenda item number 11, Council District 11, Authority for Expenditure, Kern Delta Water District, Sanitation and Accounting are requesting board approval and execution of an authority for expenditure in the amount of $35,000 to encumber funds for the payment of water utility charges to be incurred at the Green Acres Farm in Bakersfield, California for the period of July 1, 2019 through June 30th, 2020. Water utility charges are established by the Kern County Water District Board of Directors as permitted by the California Water Code Section 35423. The fund is the Sewer Operations and Maintenance Fund, and the information on the fund is in the agenda item. Ms. Simons.
Yes, good morning, President James.
Good morning.
Commissioners and Bureau reps. I'm Sherry Simons. I'm with the Hyperion Water Reclamation Plant. And this AFE, it's in the amount, the request is in the amount of $35,000 for Kern Delta water. This water is used at the Green Acres farm. The primary source of water for the farm is the effluent from the city of Bakersfield, the reclaimed water. This is supplemental water, typically used in summer when additional waters are needed for the crops. And that's pretty much it on that one.
Again, this is for current fiscal. As Sherry mentioned,
Yes, it
any
is.
questions? Commissioner Caballos made a motion that we adopt agenda item number 11, seconded by Commissioner Davis. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 11. Thank you, ma'am. Have a nice weekend. Any issue sending number 11 forthwith? We'll send number 11 forthwith. I see that you're here for number 10 as well. Authority for expenditure, South Coast Air Quality Management District. Mr. Sachs, you have a card in on number 10. Sanitation and the Office of Accounting are requesting board approval and execution of an authority for expenditure in the amount of $200,000 for Hyperion Water Reclamation Plant to encumber funds to pay fees and licenses required by the South Coast Air Quality Management District, a state regulatory agency. SCAQMD has the authority to impose fees for equipment, permit renewals, annual emissions, and various other fees as outlined in Rule 301 of the SCAQMD. The total anticipated fees and licenses of Public Works to execute the service contract agreement, and the fund is listed there as Sewer Operations and Maintenance Fund. Mr. Sachs on number 10.
Thank you. Good morning. Yeah, the reason I held this actually is about the Kern Delta Water District and the fact that you're doing so much work up there for the water district. I think what needs to happen is we need to take a look in LA about what's going on with the Metropolitan Water District and the DWP as far as repairing some of the water lines, water mains, water infrastructure in Southern California so that we're not pumping all this money into the Delta to bring more water to the south. Because if you just bring the water to the south and you don't fix the leaks and the bad infrastructure, then you're just paying for water to be leaked into the ground. And that just doesn't make sense. We have an opportunity to get some funds. I mean, there's public work funds that should be available. There's bonds that have been passed that should be available. I think it would behoove some of these water boards and water districts who really don't have the money as like DWP and the Metropolitan Water Board to do the service because they're small water districts and they just don't get the revenue. But if they get an opportunity from the county just passed a measure to get some money. If they get that money and they use it for infrastructure repair, A, it puts people to work, and B, it saves water that's being leaked into the ground, and C, it lowers the cost overall because you don't have to worry about getting more water from the north. It's not a finite amount of water we have. It's not going to just turn on the tap. One of these days, people are going to turn on their tap, and it's not going to run. You need to fix the structure down here first before you start looking outside the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Dr. Campos, my colleagues, Commissioner Cabello and Commissioner Garcia, point out that we've got some confusion on the numbering of the items regarding the yellows that I have, the sheet that I have versus the online official agenda. So between the Kern Delta Water District and the one that we just called, which one is 10 and which one is 11, just so the record is clear? I recognize we're handling both, but we ought to have a clear record.
Item number 10 is the AFE for Kern Delta Water District. Item number 11 is the South Coast Air Quality Management District. Item number 12 is the AFE for State Water Resources Control Board.
Okay, so we did item number 12 without confusion.
12, 11, and 10.
All right, number 10 we just did when I called 11 with Kern Delta. So the item that Mr. Sachs wanted to speak on at AQMD, that one should be number 11, even though it's listed on my sheet as number 10. Ms. Simons will go ahead and hear you on that as well.
Good morning again. I'm Sherry Simons, again with Hyperion Water Reclamation Plant. And this request is for an AFE in the amount of $200,000 to the South Coast Air Quality Management District to pay fees associated with the plant's Title V air operating permit. And they're fees that cover things like emissions fees, permit fees, application fees, plan check fees, multiple fees on those. And that's, like I said, these funds are to manage that permit.
Any questions? Without questions, we have Commissioner Cabello's motion, seconded by Commissioner Davis. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 11 on what is official for the SCAQMD. Thank you, ma'am. Have a nice weekend. Any issues sending that forthwith? We'll send that item forthwith. Let me move to number 9. Number 9, request for qualifications, personal services contracts, pre-qualified on-call list for various public works projects, recommending that the board authorize the city engineer to issue and advertise the transmitted request for qualifications to environmental documentation and environmental specialty studies consultants. Secondly, authorize the staff from the Department of Public Works to evaluate and pre-qualify the respondents based upon the requirements and procedures set forth in the RFQ. Third, authorize the city engineer to negotiate a personal services contract with each of the highest rated and most responsive firms. And fourth, direct the city engineer to report to the Board of Public Works with his recommendations on executing the negotiated contracts. On number 9, Ms. Martin.
Good morning. My name is Maria Martin. I'm an environmental affairs officer with the Bureau of Engineering. Just as a brief background, engineering is responsible for compliance with various federal, state, local laws that require us to assess the potential environmental impacts. Environmental impacts or risks of public works projects. For example, compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act often requires preparation of environmental impact reports for proposed projects that could have a significant impact on the environment. We need consultant services or support for various reasons. For example, for work that requires professional expertise or credentials not available from staff, such as archaeological resource surveys or historical surveys, or when the amount of qualified staff is insufficient to meet demands for the environmental review services that are currently in our queue. To address these issues, engineering has historically used on-call personal services contracts with qualified consultants, including the list for environmental documentation consultant services and the list for environmental specialty studies consultant services. Please note that funding for these consultant services is on a project-by-project basis. The current on-call contracts for these services were extended in 2018 and will expire in 2021. As such, engineering is requesting approval from the board to establish new on-call consultant lists per the recommendations that you read on the record. The new on-call contracts will allow us to increase the number of available consultants, which will optimize the value of services provided to the city and help meet project delivery schedules and to implement the current business inclusion program. Norman Mundy and I are here to answer any questions that you may have. And also attending with us is our current intern, Vanessa de Santiago, who is attending the University of Laverne.
Great, thank you. Dr. Campos will be happy to hear that. Let's go to Commissioner Davis for questions.
Yes, I wanted to ask that you give me some clear indication in terms of this is a request for extension?
No, this is a request to establish new lists. The contracts were extended in 2018 and they will expire in 2021. However, we're working on the new on-call now.
I see. Now, this is environmental, correct?
Yes, environmental documentation and environmental specialty services.
And I understand that in the area of environmental, it does not have many minority certified firms, as do some other areas of work. Yet, I did hear you say that we embrace business inclusion methods here.
Yes.
In looking at the funding sources, and you mentioned that federal funding is involved, are there any projects that we have that are state or local funded absent any federal funds among those that might be available for work?
Yes, we do.
Okay. In terms of those firms, those areas of work, what do we do in terms of creating opportunities for various firms who might possibly be diverse to get work in those areas?
Well, the primes conduct outreach, and also, as a matter of fact, we're looking to follow some recommendations that we received from our commissioner as well. So I know that there is outreach, and there's also certain activities that promote. For example, Norman will talk about one that we're looking into.
Sure.
Thank you, Maria. Norman Mundy, Bureau of Engineering. These contracts will be issued under the current business inclusion program that the city has. Our existing contracts were issued under the old regime of Maybe-Weeby. So these new contracts will require firms proposing to go through an outreach that is consistent with the new business improvement program, and that will be outreach involving not only minority businesses, women business enterprises, but also small business enterprises, disadvantaged veterans business enterprises, and such. So these will be under the new business inclusion program.
Can you speak a little bit about where we're thinking about putting some, looking into the flyers and advertising, promoting?
Oh, yes. Commissioner Caloza mentioned to us an event that's occurring September 27th, 2 weeks from today, called Accessing LA,
Correct.
which is an opportunity for firms interested in potentially doing business with the city to appear and get information about opportunities for working with the city. And we are currently looking into whether or not that might be a good opportunity for us to publicize the upcoming RFQ that we're asking you to authorize us to issue today.
I think that's an excellent activity to do that because we have at least 4 or 5 of those access activities, and in fact we are working on the same goal, and I think it's critically important that we begin to communicate with each other in various areas within the department.
Yeah, so we are looking for opportunities as such, and also encouraging our firms to conduct extensive outreach, because you are absolutely right, it is challenging to find firms because this is a very specialized contract.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Anything further, Commissioner Garcia?
Thank you, President James. I have a couple of questions, and I'm very happy to hear that you'll be attending Accessing LA event at Cal State Northridge on the 27th. It's a great opportunity to actually do what we are promoting here, the new businesses. So one of my questions is about how many new firms will be able to actually make it into the new list that you're creating?
I do not have a current target. It's going to depend on how many proposals we receive. I'm hoping to get a robust firm of at least 10 on each list.
Okay, and will they have terms? Are you thinking 2 years, 3 years, 5 years of a list?
I'm considering a 5-year term.
Okay, just wanted to kind of get some kind of background on how this will look afterwards. So thank you for coming to the event on the 27th.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Then I'll make a motion that we adopt agenda item number 8. Number 9. Lots of confusion on my documents this morning. Is there a second on my motion for number 9 by Commissioner Davis? Any objection? And Commissioner Garcia, any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 9. Thank you. Any issue sending number 9 forthwith? We will send number 9 forthwith. Agenda item number 7, contract acceptance, Echo Park Silver Lake Adaptive Traffic Control System. That's an ATSAC system, Phase 2. Council Districts 4 and 13, recommending that the board accept the contract. Mr. Bagby on number 7.
Roosevelt Bagby with the Bureau of Contract Administration. We recommend the acceptance of this contract. The contract was executed by your board on September 8th, 2014 in the amount of $1,982,531 to KDC Incorporated, DBA Dynaelectric. The construction was completed on July 31st, 2017. This project had a contingency of $198,253 with a total authorized budget of $2,180,784. This project consisted of upgrading our existing ATSAC system and installing the new adaptive traffic control system. On February 19, 2016, your board adopted the Joint Report Number 1, which increased the contingency of funding on this project by $240,435, giving a revised budget of $2,421,219. There was 56 change orders on this project, with increased the contract amount by $430,652.30, which brought the total cost of the project to $2,413,183.30. The project was completed at 21.27% above the original awarded amount and 0.33% below its authorized budget. The 56 change orders consisted of 53 that were participating, which increased the contract amount to $110,620.25, which was 5.58% of the original contract. The 3 non-participating change orders increased the contract amount by $320,032.05, which was an increase of 16.1% of the original contract amount. On July 31st, 2017, final corrections were completed by the contractor. On August 9th, 2017, retention funds were released in the amount of $120,659.18. There are no funds that are being withheld or disputed on this contract. There are no funds that are due to the contractor. The contractor has complied with the equal employment and labor compliance requirements, and there are no unresolved property owner complaints in connection with this project. So we are now recommending the acceptance of this contract.
All right, thank you, sir. Commissioner Caloza.
Thank you, President James. I just wanted to, this is unrelated to the item, I just wanted to say welcome to Mr. Roosevelt Bagby. I believe this is your first time sitting as one of the Bureau representatives for contract administration in your new role, and you've been promoted recently to Chief Inspector, right?
Correct.
So congratulations, and welcome to the board as a Bureau representative, and I've had the pleasure of working with Mr. Bagby on the 6th Street Bridge Working Group, and he's incredibly knowledgeable, and we're so excited to see you moving up the ranks in Con Ed.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the warm welcome.
Great, thank you, Commissioner Caloza. Welcome, sir. Good to see you again, and I'll take that as a motion from Commissioner Caloza, and I'll second it on number 7. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 7. Any issue sending number 7 forthwith? We'll send number 7 forthwith. Mr. Bagby, you're here on number 8 as well. Council Districts 1, 4, 8, 9, 10, and 14, contract acceptance, Santa Monica Freeway Corridor, Adaptive Traffic Control System, the ATSAC system, Phase 2. Recommending that the board accept the contract. Mr. Sachs, you have a card in on number 8.
Yes, thank you again. I do have a card on number 8. The reason I put a card in on number 8 is actually I looked at this as the Santa Monica Freeway, but it turns out it's the corridor, the Santa Monica Freeway Corridor. And so what streets would that involve? In item number 7, it was Echo Park's Silver Lake Traffic Control System. So it wasn't a corridor per se, it was, I guess, the neighborhoods. And how exactly will they manage to control traffic on the Santa Monica Freeway? Is it the off-ramps and on-ramps that they're going to control? Because nobody goes anywhere. It's I believe I read in a report from the South Bay Council of Governments about mind-numbing traffic on the freeways. And so if you have mind-numbing traffic, maybe they could do something to adopt a control in your mind. Maybe they could give out pot. That would help. That adjusts your mind. I have something to say about that in public comment. But I believe there was an organization started that was called FAST, Fixing Angelenos Stuck in Traffic. They went bankrupt. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Mr. Bagby on number 8.
This contract for this project was executed by your board on September 8th, 2014 in the amount of $2,998,100. The construction was complete on May 5th, 2016 by KDC Incorporated, DBA Dyna Electric. This project consisted of upgrading the existing ATSAC system and installing the new ATCS system. The project was awarded for $2,998,167 with a contingency of $299,817, giving a total authorized budget of $3,297,984. There were 74 change orders on this project, which increased the contract amount by $294,658.51, which gave us a total complete for this project of $3,292,825.51. The project was completed at 9.83% above the awarded amount and 0.16 below its authorized budget. There were 74 change orders on this project, which 71 were participating and 3 were not participating. The participating change orders increased the contract by $105,450.36, which was an increase of 3.52% of the original contract. The non-participating contracts increased the contract amount by $189,208.15, which was an increase of 6.3% of the original contract amount. May 5th, 2016, the contractor completed all final corrections. On May 13th, 2016, retention was released in the amount of $87,952, less the disputed funds. On May 27th, 2016, amount of $54,932.10 of disputed funds were released. And on December 9th, 2016, final release of disputed funds in the amount of $21,250 were released to the contractor. So now there are no disputed funds or funds being withheld on this project. There are no funds due to the contractor. There are no unresolved property owner complaints in connection with this project. The contractor has complied with all of the equal employment opportunity and labor compliance requirements of this contract. Therefore, we are recommending acceptance of this contract.
Thank you, sir. Any questions on agenda item number 8? No questions. Commissioner Close has made a motion that we adopt agenda item number 8. I'll second it. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 8. Thank you, sir. Have a nice weekend. Any issue sending number 8 forthwith? We'll send number 8 forthwith. That takes us to number 4, property acquisition in Council District 5, Expedition West Bikeway Northvale Segment Project, recommending that the board first authorize the city engineer or his designee to negotiate for and acquire the real property listed in the attached table, that's transmittal number 1, as required by Council File 09-1295-S5, that's transmittal number 2, and for the completion of the project. And secondly, authorize the city engineer or his designee to request the Los Angeles Department of Transportation, that's DOT, to draw the necessary demands payable individually to the affected property owners for the cost to acquire the 13 parcels listed in the transmittal up to a total amount of $735,000. Mr. Becerra.
Good morning, President James, Commissioners, Bureau Representatives. This project is located south of Cheviot Hills and north of the Freeway 10, and it's parallel to the Expo line. And the goal of this project is to have a continuous bike path from Exposition Park up to Santa Monica. And it has been in design for more than 6 years due to funding issues. But it's only now that Council District 5, through Councilman Paul Koretz, has this project to be realized soon. And Councilman Paul Koretz has been submitting resolutions that LADOT to have the funding requirement for this $12.5 million project. So we are coming to you for your approval to have this board report approved or adopted.
Thank you. Any questions on the acquisition of these properties for the bike path? I don't have any. Commissioner Cabello has made a motion, seconded by Commissioner Davis. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 4. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any issue sending number 4? Have a nice weekend. Any issue sending number 4 forthwith? We'll send number 4 forthwith. Agenda item number 3, budget increase. This is Council District 7 and supplemental agreement change order number 3, Latuna Canyon Road Emergency Storm Drain and Embankment Repair Project, recommending that the board first increase the construction budget authority by $1,600,000 and approve a revised construction budget of $3,913,362.73 for the project. Secondly, authorize the city engineer to issue supplemental agreement change order number 3 to John S. Meek Company for a not-to-exceed amount of $1,016,388 for Phase 2 of the project, which includes reconstruction of the embankment, installation of secondary drainage infrastructure, and other related improvements at the site. Mr. Schmidt on number 3.
Good morning, President James, Commissioners, Department Representatives, Dr. Campos, and Mr. Jordan. My name is Patrick Schmidt, Bureau of Engineering, Geotechnical Engineering Division. As President James stated, I am here today to seek increase the construction budget authority by $1,600,000 and to obtain an approved revised construction budget of $3,913,362.73 for the Latuna Canyon Storm Drain and Embankment Repair Project. In addition, we're here to seek issuance of a supplemental agreement change order number 3 to John S. Meek for a not-to-exceed amount of $1,016,388 for Phase 2 of the project. The BOE administers the emergency pre-qualified on-call geotechnical and structural contractors list. The Board of Public Works approved a list of 7 qualified contractors and authorized the city engineer to issue and transmit contract agreements to the 7 qualified contractors on February 28, 2014. The term of these contracts was for 5 years, and these contracts expired on May 11, 2019. The Latuna Canyon project, the Latuna Canyon area, including the project site, was adversely affected by the 2017 Latuna fire, and subsequent rainstorms in early 2018 damaged beyond repair an existing 7-foot diameter corrugated metal culvert that extended underneath Latuna Canyon Road and collapsed a portion of the southern embankment, impacting the area adjacent to the roadway. In response to this damage and with consideration to the funding constraints, the BOE designed a repair for the project consisting of 2 separate individual phases. Phase 1 of the project consists primarily of tunneling and installing a new 332-foot long, 8-foot diameter reinforced concrete pipe and associated inlet and outlet structures. Phase 1 of the project is now 95% complete. As President James mentioned, Phase 2 consists of reconstructing the embankment, installing secondary drainage, and other related improvements. On August 1st, 2018, bids for the project were solicited from the 7 pre-qualified contractors in accordance with the executed contracts. The bids were to include separate bid amounts for Phases 1 and Phases 2 of the project. On August 23, 2018, 4 bids were received by the board, of which John S. Meek was the lowest bidder. And on October 24, 2018, the board awarded a contract to John S. Meek in the amount of $2,077,923 with a contingency amount of $235,439.73 for a total approved construction budget of $2,313,362.73 to construct Phase 1 of the project. Shortly after John S. Meek started construction, the construction site in the local area was inundated with up to 45 feet of standing water, and 1,000 cubic yards of debris and alluvium were washed into the construction area throughout the numerous storms that we experienced throughout the 2018 to 2019 rainy season. During this time, John S. Meek was directed to pump water from behind the embankment in order to prevent overtopping of the road and washing out of Latuna Canyon Road. In addition, wherever possible, we had John S. Meek remove accumulated alluvium and stockpile it next to the road to be used for the Phase 2 portion of the project. On March 1st, 2019, the BOE issued change order number 1 in the amount of $142,424.37 using the project's contingency for this unseen storm-related damage between the time period of November 29, 2018 and January 15, 2019. On May 8th of 2019, the board authorized the city engineer to issue change order number 2 in the amount of $195,989.67 to cover pumping and debris-related removal costs for the time period between January 16, 2019 and February 21, 2019. To cover the cost of change order number 2, we had to delete bid items 9 through 11 to increase the project contingency to $209,815.36 in order to pay the change order number 2. I should mention that the additional debris dewatering and debris removal did take place between February 22nd, 2019 and into June of 2019, which will necessitate a future change order to cover these costs. On August 23, 2019, the board approved a replacement contract number and issued a revised construction order to John S. Meek for this project to replace the expired contract that expired on May 11, 2019. Supplemental agreement change order number 3 will provide funding in the amount of $1,016,388 for Phase 2 of the project. The proposed increase in the construction budget and will not only fund supplemental agreement change order number 3, but will also supplement the project's contingency to be used for future change orders and to restore bid items number 9 through 11 to the project. Funding for this request in the amount of $1,600,000 is provided in the current fiscal year's budget from the SB1 Road Maintenance Rehabilitation Fund. Fund number 59V, Department 50, Appropriation Units 50 SKZP and 50 SKHE. That's the conclusion of my report. I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Thank you for the explanation. Pretty significant increase. It is what it is. Any other questions? All right. I'll make a motion that we adopt agenda item number 3, seconded by Commissioner Garcia. Thank you for the explanation, sir, and for the briefing. Any objection on number 3? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 3. Any issue sending number 3 forthwith? We'll send number 3 forthwith. Have a nice weekend. Agenda item number 2, construction services contract, Cisco Capital Improvement Project 8547, Terminal Island Water Reclamation Plant 6-inch full high-pressure gas pipe replacement. Recommending that the board authorize the city engineer to use the construction services contract and to issue, it's not the Cisco company, that's the acronym, authorize the city engineer to use the construction services contract and to issue task work orders to the contractor for an amount not to exceed $1,107,000 for the Terminal Island Water Reclamation Plant. Mr. Kopp on number 2. I don't have a card for you on number 2, Mr. Sachs. I have you on number 1. Mr. Kopp on number 2.
Good morning. David Kopp, Senior Civil Engineer, Environmental Engineering Division. This is a project to replace an aging fuel gas pipeline at the Terminal Island Water Reclamation Plant, in particular a digester gas pipeline, or otherwise known as biogas pipeline. What this does is conveys digester gas from our digesters, which we use to reduce the volume of solids produced in the wastewater process, and use that fuel gas to produce steam to in turn heat these digesters to continue that cycle sustainably. And so over the course of the last 45 years, this pipe has reached the end of its lifetime. These are expected to be between 40 and 50 years old life expectancy. And so the time's come to replace this piping. And it's worth noting that over the course of the last 14 months, we've done 2 emergency repairs to this line. So it's become to the point where we need to do a full replacement. And so what the scope of the project is proposed is of a total of about 600 linear feet. We have a direct replacement the same spot where the existing piping is, replace about 220 feet with high-density polyethylene pipes, 6-inch. This is the more modern pipe to go with for this application. And then to realign the balance of that, approximately 380 feet, a mix of below ground and above ground. And with that, the new alignment, that would also come with the associated fittings and appurtenances and monitoring equipment to ensure continuous operation. And then, of course, the earth and street work involved for the underground component of the work. And for the Cisco justification aspect, the construction services contract, our contractor is Murray Company. They're currently mobilized to the Terminal Island plant at this time, so they are best positioned to respond to this urgent necessity, as well as this contract vehicle allows us to compress the overall project delivery timeline and hit the ground as soon as possible to replace this line before further leaks and resulting expensive spot repairs are incurred. The total budget requested is $1,107,000, which includes contingency, which is typical for all projects we request to award through Cisco. And due to the underground component of this project, it's appropriate to set aside some contingency budget to account for those unforeseen conditions through the course of the work.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. This is a little higher than we typically go with our construction services contract?
From the average Cisco project, yes. It's not outside the norm. We have an active project at Hyperion to refurbish the Pregerson Technical Support Facility. That's in the $2 million range. So as of recent, it's not out of the norm, but it's not the average price, so to speak.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Kopp on number 2? Commissioner Caballos made a motion that we adopt agenda item number 2. I'll second it. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 2. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Have a nice weekend, although you're not going far. You're here on number 1.
Weekend doesn't start yet.
Any issues sending number 2 forthwith? We'll send number 2 forthwith. That does take us to number 1. Council District 6, budget increase and change order numbers 39, 40, and 48. KDC Incorporated doing business as Dyne Electric. Capital Improvement Project 6163. Donald C. Tillman Water Reclamation Plant Electrical Power System Modifications Project. Recommending that the board authorize $524,000 in additional contingency and approve a revised construction budget of $9,094,433 for the project. And secondly, authorize the city engineer to issue change order numbers 39, 40, and 48 for the project to install additional wiring, provide rental generators to power the influent sewer gates for an extended time, and provide rental generators to power the switchgear for an extended time, respectively. Mr. Sachs on number 1.
Yes, thank you. I'm not really too concerned about all the money because there's really, it's a black hole. But what I'd really like to do is have somebody define what exactly constitutes a capital improvement project. The city has plenty of capital improvement projects. They have plenty of public works projects. They have capital improvement for public works, and they have public works for capital improvement. But who defines what is a public works project? What is a capital improvement project? What authority is, who's granted the authority to decide what's what? Sidewalks would be what? It doesn't fall into either one of those categories. Yet people need sidewalks. Why aren't they considered a capital improvement project? Why aren't they considered a public improvement project? This is a real question. People look at what's going on in the city and they just kind of like throw their hands up in disgust because nothing ever happens. Well, nothing ever happens because nobody ever asks any kinds of questions. And they figure, well, we'll get it the next time. So I'm asking a question. I don't expect an answer here. But it would be nice if somebody from the city, with all the agencies we have and all the leadership, would define what makes up a public works project or what makes up a capital improvement project. We always find out there's never enough money. But if there's money for these projects and you have loan projects, city loan, MICLA funds, you have different avenues of funds that wouldn't cost the residents more taxes, because you have lease revenue bonds, you have for housing, you have different avenues that nobody seems to want to
2 minutes.
investigate. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sachs. Mr. Kopp on number 1.
So I'm going to start with the scope of the project, which will in turn kind of explain some of the impacts we've been experiencing currently and why I'm here today. So what this project does is provide electrical redundancy. And with wastewater design, compared with other industrial applications, construction, we can't just turn off the sewer. We have to keep things going continuously. And therefore, for example, if we need one pump to be operating normally on a given process, we will design for two or more so that if one is down for planned or unplanned maintenance, we have a backup. In turn with that, in terms of tanks or pumps, we also have to make sure that electrically that we can sustain ourselves in the event of a intermittent out of service with a given electrical system. And so we have various equipment, electrical equipment that's redundant. What this project will do is convert this single loop system at the Donald C. Tillman Water Reclamation Plant to a dual feed radial system, which provides redundant power connections, the wires, so to speak. And so at the time, over the course of the last couple months, we've encountered some impacts that can be summarized basically in underground unforeseens, which would be common in pipeline construction in the street. And we have some underground work as well that we had to navigate through, as well as delays incurred to individual activities on the overall project schedule and delays therein to the project schedule itself, or otherwise known as our critical path on the schedule. Starting with the underground unforeseens, we have change order 39 described in the board report, where in the course of trying to reuse as part of this project, we're reusing almost 10 miles of electrical power feed cable. And the scope is a mix of reusing and installing new cable in order to provide that dual radial power feed to all the systems at the plant. And of that 49,000 feet of cable that we had to test before we could bring things back into service, about 6,000 feet of that, which sounds like a lot in relation to the overall amount of cable we're trying to reuse, therefore to minimize the cost of the schedule, it's about 12%. And so before we could re-energize this stuff safely with our project inspectors, we did what's called a high pot test to test the insulation that surrounds all the cables. Unfortunately, in the nearly 40 years of these cables being in service, some of the insulation has likely gone bad due to the results of these failed tests. And so we need to replace these long runs, and the anticipated cost is listed in the board report is expected to be around $95,000. The other impacts are related to activities related to the turnover of equipment, which speaks to the need for redundancy for the electrical systems at the Tillman plant, is that when we are replacing these main switchboards, they're like a super surge protector for wastewater equipment or major industrial systems. Before we could work on one, they had to the plant had to make sure that one works, that they could reliably operate before we could shut one down and work on it, which means we're under construction with the plant operating without redundancy unless we provide some sort of temporary power generation capability, which the project envisioned as part of the original scope, the original bid. Unfortunately, the durations necessary to turn things over took longer. And so we had generators connected to certain critical components of the plant that had to otherwise, their rental costs, their associated rental costs had to be extended for a few more months. Those costs are described in the board report as well. And then in addition to that, this project needs to tie into the distributed control system that's being upgraded through an existing department's contract with Honeywell, or the LA Winds project. Our ability to tie into that system hinges on the completion of what we call a PCM module, or the cabinet that we need to run our cables into and tie in so that this facility can be tied into the remote monitoring capabilities of the plant, which the LA Winds project envisions. And so that will be ready in about 6 months. So in turn, in order for us to declare victory on this project, we have to complete that last component, which is extra work for the contract, not originally foreseen in the original bid. And as a result, that requires us to extend the contract schedule and come before your board to request additional funding as listed in the agenda in the board report.
Mr. Kopp, thank you again. Comprehensive, explained in a way that our record is clear and we can understand it, and other people listening in can understand it. Look, this is, I think it's something that, yes, it's a lot of money, but it's something we have to do. And I appreciate the context. So I don't have any questions. I'll make a motion that we adopt agenda item number 1, seconded by Commissioners Cabello and Garcia. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 1. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any issue sending number 1 forthwith? We will send number 1 forthwith. Dr. Campos, let's go ahead and take care of our minutes. We have September 4th, Wednesday, and August 30th, Friday, minutes for approval. Commissioner Cabello has seconded by motion to approve those meeting minutes. Any objection? Without objection, those meeting minutes will be approved. The only remaining items we have are 5 and 6, correct?
5 and 6 in public comments.
Okay, let's go ahead and take general public comment. Mr. Sachs?
Yes, thank you. Good morning. I was just over in City Council. They need to pad the chambers there. And I was talking about yesterday's newspaper, September 12th. There's several columns in here that catch your attention. Black market dwarfs cannabis industry. State passes measure on gig workers. And Disney pushes new way to pay creators. Those are 3 of the ones that I liked. So let's see. Real quick about the black market. It mentions that there's $8.7 billion in sales of cannabis in the black market and $3.1 billion in sales in legal market. But the $8.7 billion is almost as much as the city's budget. It's pretty amazing. There's a Bureau of Cannabis Control that last year did 19 search warrants for over 3,000 illegal dispensaries in the state. You do the math. And this one about the state passing the measure on gig workers, it said it codified the law, whatever that exactly means. And Lyft or Uber spokesman said, doesn't matter, we're not going to follow the law. So the courts ruled on what makes a subcontractor an employee. They didn't follow the law. The state passed a law that codified the law, and they've already said they're not going to codify the law. And this final one, Disney pushes new ways to pay creators. There's another way to pay in Hollywood? I thought Hollywood accounting was the top of the line. Oh, and there's one other one that I mentioned, and it's about the the death of the president of Zimbabwe occurred. And what caught my eye in that article is that in 2009, Zimbabwe had an inflation rate of 1 billion.
Thank you, sir. Hugh Kenny? Good morning.
Thank you. Sitting too long. Yeah, I'm old, as we just made obvious, so I get to be the doomsayer, like in Shakespeare or Greek tragedies. And what I'm talking about, like, I wrote it out to make that easier. In Japan, according to the French health minister, 14,000 citizens died from heat in June and July. In Japan, 57 people died and 18,000 were hospitalized. Presumably, the moneymakers set much of the Amazon on fire. And a schoolgirl just recently sailed across the Atlantic to warn us of the jeopardy that we're in. In our city, we have grasping entrepreneurs and narcissists who think it's all right to reach in and tear out the our community of trees that we all know can protect us. When you permit these kinds of assaults, when you give permission, it's pretty much over. They move on to the regulatory carousel with its latent preemptions. It's a grave responsibility you hired on for. Please summon up any wisdom you may have been fortunate enough to gather up in your life so far. We all need it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Zogren, Diane Zogren.
Happy Friday the 13th, dare I say it. President James, honorable commissioners, I'm here again today well, first of all, my background, I'm a horticulture consultant, and I've been in the business of consulting for landscaping and landscaping myself for over 20 years. I'm here again today to urge the board to look at these tree replacement plans that are before the board and you're routinely being asked to adopt replacement trees that are a plan that's horticulturally unsound. This is a myth that you can double or quadruple the number of replacement trees on a size of land that's smaller, that the plants or the trees will not survive. They'll actually cause problems, pest problems, because of the overcrowding. CFAC wrote a letter about this to the board 2 years ago and urged this board to consider that these planting plans that are before you are a problem. So I urge you to please look back at that letter in 2017 that CFAC, the Community Forest Advisory Council, which is there to advise the council, and they have some other requests in there. But I routinely look at these, I spot check these. So it is a repetitive problem, it's not an isolated problem. And I really hope that we can find a path to resolve this, because I know we all want a healthy urban forest, but these replacement tree plans are not, well, they're in conflict with that. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. That will close general public comment. Agenda item number 5, Council District 2, tree removal at 11472 West Laurel Crest Drive. Recommending that the board first find that the project is categorically exempt under Article 3, Section 1, Class 3, Category 1 of the city's Environmental Quality Act guidelines, and there is no substantial evidence the proposed project will have significant effect on the environment and is in compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act, that's CEQA. Secondly, find that none of the exceptions to the use of a categorical exemption as set forth in Section 15300.2 of state CEQA guidelines apply. Third, specify that the Bureau of Street Services, that's Streets LA, Urban Forestry Division, located at 1149 South Broadway, is custodian of the documents and other material that constitute the record of proceedings under which the board's decision is based. And fourth, approve the request of a fee permit to remove 6 coast live oaks. It says interior live oaks, but that'll be revised to say coast live oak trees. Tree replacements are required. This has been amended, this has been continued a few times. We've had public comment on this item already at least through one iteration. I think it was the original meeting date that we did that. And I am informed by at least the council office that at this point the parties don't have an agreement. We'll find out more about that when we speak to them. But first, Mr. Benuelos, let's start with you. If you could, again, just give us the presentation, summarize what the Bureau is being asked to do, what you are recommending to the Board of Public Works, and then we will hear from the real parties and interests.
Yes, good morning, President James, Commissioners, Bureau Representatives, City Attorney Dr. Campos. Hector Banuelos with Streets LA, Urban Forestry Division. What we have before us is a request to remove 6 coast live oak trees for construction of a single-family residence at 11472 Laurel Crest Drive in the community of Studio City. The proposed single-family residence will have approximately 2,800 square feet of residential floor area on a property that measures approximately 10,800 square feet. The lot has steep to moderate topography and some grading, a lot of grading will have to be performed, and slope stability measures have to be performed in order to construct the home. Most of the trees are within the footprint of the dwelling, with a couple of them being impacted by the required retaining wall and other grading stability measures. And so there's a couple of trees on the property that will be retained in place. So there are 2 to be retained and 6 to be removed. Overall, there are some oak trees on the adjacent properties that have been addressed within the report, and that their impact was addressed as minimal, and there will be monitored, and there is protective fencing around the trees at the time of the inspection. If approved, the applicant will plant 24-inch box-sized trees of the coast live oaks of the same species, and the trees will be bonded for a period of 3 years to ensure their survival, and watered and maintained for a minimum 3-year period. The second council district office was informed of the tree removal permit request, as well as the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment and the Community Forestry Advisory Committee. I'm not sure of what how the council office is on what position they have taken on this project. Any questions?
No, not for you at this time. Commissioner Cabello does, sorry.
Thank you, President James. Mr. Ben-Willis, I'm just wondering if you could address Ms. Zogren's claim of replanting on site when we require, when a protected tree is removed, to double or 4 times the number of trees as replacements. Are we taking into account on site whether or not that is a healthy number, or do we think about through how many trees can healthily fit on site, and given the plans of the new development, what have you? And do the remainder go into a fee? Why am I forgetting the name of the fee? The tree replacement fee, tree guarantee fee. Can you explain or walk us through for the public's edification how that works?
Yeah, the tree replacement guarantee fee does not apply to the protected trees. It only applies to the street trees. But when the tree replacement plans are reviewed by our division, we do look at the spacings, and we look at the long-term survivability of the trees or sustainability of the trees. In this case, they are a little bit close. There's going to be some impact as far as like the shade that is existing on this property. However, we feel that we opine that the trees will survive. They'll be stunted somewhat. Their canopies are going to be somewhat altered by the amount of shade that's there at this property. But the trees, that's the only really feasible locations they can plant or identified on the plans. If the board has a long-standing policy of 4 to 1, other opportunity would be to maybe perhaps increase the size and lessen the amount of trees on the property. That's another option we can consider.
And what of the other concerns that Ms. Zogren brought up, such as pests and other unintended consequences? Are those taken into account as well?
They can be present when the trees are planted too close. They can be a problem, pest and disease.
But in this case, are we thinking through that? If they are a little too close, are we increasing the risk of that happening?
There's always a risk of that happening. But in this case, we don't think that it's imminent.
Prohibitive.
Yeah, but it can potentially happen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cabello. Thank you, Mr. Ben-Willis. I think what I will do here is I've got cards from, it looks like Daryl Olisinski. Okay. Oh, you're on number 6. Got it. Okay, because you put number 5. Yeah, okay, we've got 2 of you on number 6. So I've got Mr. Schlossberg on number 5 and Mr. Hall on number 5. Mr. Schlossberg, I know we've heard from you before, but as the applicant, I'd like to hear from you again, unless you would just prefer to respond to Mr. Hall, which I'm going to let you do either way. I'm sorry? Okay. Yes, please. I am going to give you an opportunity to respond to the protest, but as the applicant, I wanted to give you the opportunity to speak first if you would like.
Thank you.
As you know, say my name, Larry Schlossberg. As you know, this has been continued a number of times with my agreement, largely to provide a chance for me to work with the neighbors to find a feasible mitigation solution. And I have met with the neighbors and offered a number of things. First of all, with the comment of 24 trees being excessive for this size property, I'm not an expert, but my intuition says that is true. There are a lot of trees, and they are close. I believe that the ordinance allows for replacement trees to be planted off-site, obviously with the permission of the owners, and I would be happy to plant trees on adjacent properties as well. Likewise, my current home is 300 or 400 yards as the crow flies from this site. There's over 10,000 square feet of vacant land at my current home. I'd be happy to plant trees there as well to reduce the number of trees on the particular site, as well as planting trees on city-owned property or donating trees to the city. I'm open to any of that. So anyways, in my meetings with the neighbors, I offered to plant fewer larger trees, and I was informed by one of the neighbors who had some expertise in the area that larger trees would tend not to survive, or are less likely to survive as smaller trees, right? Because they haven't grown up in that exact environment, which is fair enough. I also offered to actually a suggestion or comment from the neighbor's attorney that a possible mitigation is a deed restriction of portions of the property which are not going to be developed, a deed restriction to prohibit any future development to maintain the whatever habitat is on those properties, which I agreed to do. And then I also volunteered at my current residence, as I mentioned, which is close by. There's over 10,000 square feet of vacant area, which is about the size of the entire lot that I want to build my home on. And that property has protected trees on it. It has a natural stream running through it. I've seen deer come down and drink from the stream on my property. I offered to deed restrict that as well as a mitigation for the property that I want to build my home on. The neighbors came out with their attorney along with a representative from the Santa Monica Mountains Conservancy. They informally told me that it was a valuable habitat resource. And again, I'm happy to deed restrict that and impact the value of my current home by doing that. After that meeting, which was over a week ago, I did not hear anything from the neighbors or their attorney, and they did not return emails to me. It doesn't seem to me throughout this whole process that they have been working with me in good faith. They tend to sort of blindside me with comments and opposition at this hearing without notifying me beforehand and talking to me about it beforehand. As far as the neighbors' opposition goes, one issue is the trees, but some of the neighbors also have other issues that they are objecting to. For instance, the neighbor below me and the neighbor above me is concerned about landslides on the property. It's not related to the trees, obviously. I've offered to get them in contact with my geotechnical engineer and my structural engineer to talk about it. They've not taken up that offer. In the very first meeting with them, one neighbor objected to my children living in the house. They, perhaps don't want children in the neighborhood. It seems that many of the neighbors, their goal is to not build a house there at all, and the trees is sort of a red herring for them. Some neighbors were concerned about things like delivery of materials, parking for construction workers, and that sort of things. Again, a number of non-tree related items. I'd be happy to work with them to schedule materials, give them prior notification of large deliveries coming to the site, work with them as to where construction workers might park, but they have not spoken to me about those things. They just issued objections. So anyways, I believe I have tried to work with the neighbors in good faith. All of the things that I have just mentioned that I've offered, I am still willing to do.
Okay.
I think I've worked with them a lot and offered a lot, and it appears that the agenda is to not build a house there at all. One more thing, I was told half an hour ago, after this meeting started, by their attorney that there's one portion of the house that they object to because there is a large tree there, and they want me to remove that portion. I have looked at that in the past. Removing that portion would not save the tree because of the requirement to do grading behind the house to provide a 15-foot wide flat area, which would result in a retaining wall within 5 feet of the trunk of that particular tree. And that particular tree, by the way, I did have an arborist take a look at it. She reported to me that over the years, that tree has been somewhat unskillfully trimmed, probably by the neighbor up top to the above me, in order to enhance and preserve their views. So that neighbor apparently doesn't respect that tree all that much. So that's where I stand.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Schlossberg before we move to Mr. Hall? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Hall?
Good morning. Jamie Hall with Channel Law Group on behalf of Sunshine Hill Residents Association. So I just first want to acknowledge the fact that Mr. Schlossberg did have a total of 3 meetings with the residents. I attended all 3 meetings.
How many residents, Mr. Hall?
I various meetings, probably up to 15 at the beginning, and then the last site walk that we did, there was 4 of them, and then the intermediate meeting, there was 10, so they were fairly well attended.
Is it fair to say between 5 and 15?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So I do think it's fair to, and I do want to acknowledge Mr. Schlossberg, and also he did put on his creative thinking hat, thinking about, are there some off-site mitigation measures that we can potentially use? Mitigation banking is what he's suggesting. It is a established mitigation measure in the city's CEQA thresholds guide. And the concept there is, if you can't mitigate the impact sufficiently or on-site, or change the project design, or it's infeasible to change the project design, that you can look to an environmental resource off-site and preserve that. So I just want to first acknowledge the fact that Larry did think about that, and it was presented to the client, and they struggled and wrestled with whether or not they should accept this mitigation banking proposal as the solution to the impacts of this project. And the answer they really came back with is they didn't feel like there had been enough exploration as to whether or not on-site mitigation, i.e. changes to the project design, were infeasible. Mitigation banking is reserved, it's like the last level of mitigation. Even in the city's CEQA thresholds guide, where it explains the mitigation measures available to biological resource impacts, it's the last option. You first look at whether or not you can change the project design to reduce the impacts associated with the project. And unfortunately, they don't feel that the applicant has really done that. If you look at the project to the right, the house to the right and the house to the left, they're basically like rectangular shaped houses. They're approximately 1,100 square feet. Yes, that's much lower than what the current baseline hillside ordinance would allow. But the consequence of that is that they retain a lot of the natural vegetation upslope. And this project here is designed to basically get the maximum amount that you possibly can under the baseline hillside ordinance. And there's a portion of the house that goes back toward the rear of the lot, and it's taking out the largest tree on site. And if you were to, there's been no real meaningful alternatives evaluation for this project. If this project was redesigned such that it was rectangular in nature, and the building footprint was somewhat reduced in a reasonable way, you could save several trees, and the retaining walls would have to be relocated as well. And throughout the course of those 3 meetings we had with the developer, that was the one thing that that he said he was unwilling to do. He was not willing to change the footprint or the orientation of the building or the retaining walls. And so that's where we're at. It kind of forces you to wrestle with the one question that I know that you don't have struggled with. You have to make a necessity finding in the protected tree ordinance. You have to determine that removal of the trees is necessary in order to allow for reasonable development. And you can't just look back at the baseline hillside ordinance as a substitute for that necessity, that determination of necessity and that reasonable development finding. I know we've struggled, and unfortunately the City Council didn't give you direction as to how to define that term, but here we are. And I know from prior experience that you can change a project to save trees if you're willing to accept the consequence that that's probably going to reduce your overall property value. You know, if you have a 3,000 square foot home and it comes to a 2,000 square foot home, that's going to impact your bottom line. So as an applicant, you're probably willing to fight really hard, right, to avoid doing that. But you can make changes to this project to save additional trees. But before you even go there, and I will wrap it up really quickly, the protected tree report does have some fundamental problems with it. So I think that as a purely procedural matter, you shouldn't be ruling on this application today. My client did get a board-certified master arborist, Jen Scow, to do a peer review of the protected tree report, and they determined that there's actually 3 trees that are not even identified on the protected tree report. There are 2 walnut trees and an oak tree. And the arborist, the person who did the peer review, also said that the report didn't have basic elements that were required to evaluate impacts to trees. We already discussed the fact that the arborist that they hired misidentified the tree. That should really give you some pause. If you've already know that the species of the tree was misidentified, you should give more credibility to some of the criticisms that Mr. Scow was saying with regard to the protected tree report. So we don't think that you should rule on this at all as a procedural matter until the protected tree report is updated and revised. And then finally, I just want to talk about CEQA. You know, I love CEQA, but this project is unusual. And the unusual circumstances exception renders the use of the categorical exemption unavailable. And the reason why it's unusual is that we have a California live oak, California walnut woodland. So it's these 2 trees together that form a vegetation association. And that woodland is a sensitive natural community. And under CEQA, you look at replacing individual trees doesn't mitigate the loss of habitat. This habitat is home to an abundance of wildlife that will be permanently impacted. Impacts to sensitive natural communities are measured by area, not number of trees. So as I was driving here today, I was thinking, how can I explain this to you? Because I don't think it's sinking in. So imagine you have a wetland, right? And someone's going to build a warehouse on a wetland. And
how would you know whether it's sinking in or not?
Oh, well, I apologize. Can I just retract that? Is that possible?
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I'm just
I'm
curious how
gonna
you.
formally retract that. Yeah. I don't have a crystal ball. You're right, Commissioner Cabello. So I just want to throw out this example of a wetland, right? Imagine you're going to build a warehouse on a wetland, and you try to mitigate for the loss of the wetland simply by replacing the fish. That is what is happening here. We are replacing the loss of this woodland and all of the animals that call the woodland home simply by replacing the trees. And so we hired a professor, Dr. Travis Longcore. He's a professor at UCLA in the Institute of Environment and Sustainability. And this is what he said. People often imagine that wildlife at a development site will simply move to a new area after development. But this is not true. Any suitable habitat surrounding will already be occupied, and the wildlife numbers are reduced each time habitat is lost through development. So it's that loss of habitat issue that the trees don't mitigate. And so we do not agree that this project is exempt from CEQA. So again, I want to acknowledge Mr. Schlossberg's meeting with my client 3 times, offering up a mitigation banking proposal. It might form part of the answer to this puzzle, but I don't think, and my client doesn't believe, that we have exhausted the evaluation of changes to this particular project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. I have one question before I go to Commissioner Cabello. I may have more, but going back to your July 12th letter, you, just so the record is clear, your position hasn't changed regarding the availability of the categorical exemption in the projects located within the Santa Monica Mountains area. You've referenced the Santa Monica Mountains Zone legislation, and you've referenced the very high fire hazard severity zone. You, by referencing something else today, you're not abandoning that position, correct?
Yes, President James. The particularly sensitive environment exception we still believe is appropriate. I just thought I would, rather than reiterate, focus a little bit on the unusual circumstances exception as well.
All right. Just because you didn't mention that, I just want the record to be clear, because last time you spent more time on that, this time you spent more time on the sensitive zone. So, okay, thank you. That's for me now. Commissioner Cabello?
Thank you, President James. Thank you, Mr. Hall. You can sit down. Mr. City Attorney, I would like to ask you, is this, what is before us, in compliance with CEQA?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
What, the tree removal, the applicant's request for a tree removal permit, is it in compliance with CEQA?
Yes, we concur with the staff's recommendation that the project be found to be categorically exempt.
Excellent. And to President James's point regarding this exemption for the Santa Monica Mountains and Recreation Area, is that also the City Attorney's opinion that it is still categorically exempt despite this? Mr. City Attorney?
I'm sorry. Could you? I just want to be clear.
So related to the point that President James just made, he talked about this special zone, this exemption, the Santa Monica Mountains and Recreation Area, that it is, I guess the argument Mr. Hall is making is that it is not exempt, categorically exempt due to this area. Is the City Attorney in concurrence with that opinion?
It's our opinion that location exception does not apply in this case.
Wonderful.
And
Thank
we
you.
have taken that position in other matters as well.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Mr. Banuelos, can I ask you a question, please? Mr. Hall also claimed that the arborist hired by the applicant misidentified protected trees. In the board report, both UFD, or the Urban Forestry Division of Bureau of Street Services, has concurred with the arborist hired by the applicant. Would you agree with Mr. Hall, or do we know, is he misinformed by saying that you're misinformed about the trees being identified, or the trees that were identified, rather, I'm sorry, the protected trees were misidentified in the arborist report that you concurred with?
the tree species was misidentified within the board report that we initially, within the tree report that we initially reviewed. But it was arborist that went out there, fairly new arborist, and so he also misidentified the species. However, we had one of another staff of our certified arborist, and they went out and they did verify that in fact the tree species are coast live oaks and not the interior live oaks. So that was an error on the original arborist that submitted the report to us.
Okay, thank you very much. Colleagues, I honestly think that the applicant has more than acted in good faith. He's met several times with his neighbors and with their lawyer. Thank you, Mr. Benuelos. You could sit down. You know, I think that maybe the neighborhood association that Mr. Hall represents has maybe not acted as in good faith back. I think that per Mr. Schlossberg's comments, it seems that they have maybe tried to do games of gotcha and brought up certain developments or changes to the development at the last minute during the board meeting. And it's one thing to protect trees and urban canopy, and there are very few people more passionate about that than I am, but it's another thing to prevent anything from happening based on using this as a pretense. And that's what I feel might be happening here. I think that Mr. Schlossberg is in compliance with city regulations and ordinances, and if I'm not correct, I will leave it to the city attorney to correct me on that record. But I think that he has been a good neighbor. I think he's been a good actor in this. I think he's willing to talk additional mitigation measures, and something tells me it's just never going to be good enough. So I'm just going to have to side with Mr. Schlossberg on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cabello. Anybody else with any questions? Let me state further. Let me have Mr. Schlossberg back up for just a minute, sir. Thank you, sir, and thank you for your willingness to participate in the whole process.
Sure.
Last time we were here, one of the reasons that I wanted to continue the item was because I heard from both sides what I thought was an opportunity to come to an agreement. And I recognize, and Mr. Hall acknowledged as well, that the meetings that took place. And we heard today your willingness, and I've got a question for him after I finish with you as well, but I heard your willingness to continue to work on the items that you put on the table, for lack of a better term.
Yes.
The reference, though, that seems to be the sticking point in Mr. Hall's presentation, and yours as well perhaps, is the revision of the footprint of the home due to the placement, the existence of one of the largest, if not the largest tree that's the subject of the hearing this morning. Is it a non-starter for you to try and negotiate that? Are you looking for a ruling today so you can proceed one way or the other? Or is there something that is maybe workable? Because that's the one area where I heard Mr. Hall say that that there's still some work to be done, but it got the sense from you that for you it's not a possibility.
I did, in fact, look at options to try to preserve that one tree, both in the original design process a year ago and in recent weeks. First, let me state that since the smaller houses on either side of my property were built, there have been a number of new hillside ordinances enacting a number of new zoning restrictions in terms of setback height, just layer upon layer of setback issues, not just a simple setback, but encroachment planes where you can come up a certain distance.
And you're meeting those. I recognize that.
I am meeting all of those. I worked very hard to meet all of those, and retaining wall restrictions. I did look at trying to flip that particular wing of the house over to the other side. It would have resulted in perhaps a 28 or 30 foot high retaining wall, which is engineering infeasible. that wing of the house were simply cut off and thrown away. As I mentioned before, the grading department of LA Building and Safety requires a 15-foot flat area upslope of any construction. So to create that, it would result in excavation and a retaining wall within 5 feet of the tree that we're speaking of, and that tree would not survive in any case. So given all of the zoning restrictions, which the adjacent houses did not have, and the topography of the site and the grading restrictions and such, it's simply not feasible to not only relocate that particular portion of the house. And by the way, if I did relocate it and put it on top of the other house, it would violate height restrictions of the zoning. It's not possible to save that tree. If I can make a comment or two about what Mr. Hall had to say.
Of course.
Yes, I did meet with the neighbors 3 times. The first time at the site, there were perhaps 10 or 12 neighbors there. Most of the comments had nothing to do with trees. It had to do with construction, with construction parking, fear of landslides, concerns about my children living in the house, all kinds of things, nothing to do with the trees. The second meeting I had with them was at a neighbor's house. This was after our first hearing. I believe Mr. Hall said there were perhaps 10 people there. There were 4 neighbors there. I could identify who they were. And then the last meeting we had was actually at my own home when I invited them to take a look at the property behind my house that I offered to deed restrict. And there were 2 neighbors there. So the 10 neighbors or so being at those other meetings is an exaggeration.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. Mr. Hall? So I feel like we've, just from what we've heard from Mr. Schlossberg, and by the way, the impression that Mr. Schlossberg made, I can speak for myself, and Commissioner Cabello's already spoken for herself, as someone who's been reasonable. You even indicated, you thanked him and acknowledged his willingness to participate in the process. I feel like we've got a reasonable homeowner that's trying to work with the community, and that there's been a commitment to continue, and I think that commitment's very sincere. Is there any, I'm acting as you've been through a lot of this, as I have over the years. I'm in a mediator's role here a little bit, as our board often is. Regarding the saving of the largest tree, is there any, are there any possibilities that you sense are workable that might move us, given the totality of everything else that's on the table, that might move us away from what looks like right now an impasse?
Right. So I guess the biggest question, well, I think that if you change the footprint of the house and then maybe also reduce the size a little bit so that it didn't encroach as far into the rear setback, it wouldn't necessarily be 5 feet within the trunk of that tree. I understand the fact that there is the 15-yard of flat space that the grading division wants. You can actually get a modification from that. So you can, it's a process, it's administrative, ministerial. So you could, under particular circumstances, get them to approve 10 feet. So there are opportunities to save this tree. Will it take more work? Yes, it will take more work. You'll have to go to the grading division and try to explain to them why there are unusual circumstances that justify deviating from their normal practice. We might need to have an arborist to see whether or not there's a certain amount of root trimming that can occur, and then look at the mortality rate, the risk to mortality, and that would probably help guide your decision about whether or not it's worth it. But the bigger question, and I want to be very good faith, I come here a lot, is would that satisfy everyone in the group, saving just one tree? And I can't answer in the affirmative on that. So that's the answer to that.
I appreciate the candor. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, colleagues, I think we've got to move forward on this. And I appreciate Mr. Hall's candor on this. I'm willing to entertain a motion. Commissioner Cabello has made a motion that we adopt agenda item 5 as is, as recommended by the Bureau.
As amended? I would recommend an amendment, just a friendly amendment, so that recommendation number 4 reflects 6 coast live oak trees as opposed to the 6 interior live oak trees.
Right. Yeah, I referenced that at the beginning.
Yes.
I'll move as amended.
Okay, and that's a second from Commissioner Garcia. Okay, are there any objections? I want to put, I do have an objection. I want to put my objection on the record. I didn't hear any others. My position on this, while I respect Mr. Schlossberg and your work on the process, I'm sorry we were unable to work out an agreement here. A lot of times we are. I've said this before. I think I've at least intimated it, and and I've always tried to avoid having to say this on the record, but I've got to put my position on the record here. On this, and this is on this item. On this item, agenda item number 5, because of where this home is located, I am a bit queasy about the categorical exemption. And I know that that's not the position that Mr. Jordan has taken, but I'm in my right to disagree sometimes with the position that the city attorney's office has taken on something. And it's not that I directly disagree, but I am on the record that's before us, I'm concerned about the use of the categorical exemption here. I recognize that with our support of this, with the board's support of this today, that it may get resolved in another tribunal at another time. That's fine with me. But I've got to state my position on the record because I want it to be clear. So that would be Dr. Campos the vote of 4-1, registering my objection. Because we have it's not a unanimous vote, I always recommend that we not send something forthwith.
I was just about to make a motion to send it forthwith. But I'm happy to defer to the president.
All right. I just, it's just something, it's been a policy that we've tried to we don't, it's not a rule, it's just something that as a courtesy to everyone involved, when we have a dissenting vote, we won't send something forthwith. So what that means for the record is that if it's sent forthwith, then it is, it becomes final at the end of this meeting. Since we're not sending it forthwith, the ruling of the order of the board becomes final at the conclusion of the next meeting, which will be Monday, roughly around noon. Correct, Dr. Campos?
That is correct. In addition to that, any member that has voted a yes or a positive A, that would be Commissioner Caloza, Garcia, Davis, and Caloza may change their vote, so long as the outcome does not get changed. And if there are more than 2 of those commissioners that want to change their vote that may change the outcome, then that would have to be called back to the table so that we can have a further discussion.
Okay, and just
those are options.
And a point of clarification, that can only happen if a member decides to or calls for a reconsideration of that item at the next meeting on Monday.
That is correct.
At 10 a.m.
That is correct.
Right. I mean, just so the record's clear, Dr. Campos, I don't think you intended to, but you said Commissioner Caloza twice.
Yep.
Commissioner Cabello, Garcia, Davis, and Caloza. So any of those commissioners may change their vote without changing the outcome of the disposition. if any of the members wanted to consider or reconsider the item, then there would be a motion on Monday for reconsideration.
Okay. All right, thank you. Then that'll be the order on agenda item number 5. It is not sent forthwith. Thank you, everyone, for your participation. So agenda item, and just so that, again, the record's clear, the item passes, agenda item number 5 passes as recommended by the Bureau, but amended. It was not unanimous, so the item, I was the no vote, so the item will not be sent forthwith. It will carry over for finality on Monday at the conclusion of the meeting. There's an opportunity for a motion for reconsideration on Monday if that were to be decided. That'll take us to agenda item number 6, Council District 11, tree removal 1830 North Mango Way, recommending that the board first find that the project is categorically exempt under 15332, Class 32 of the city's Environmental Quality Act guidelines, and there is no substantial evidence the proposed project will have significant effect on the environment and is in compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act. Secondly, find that none of the exceptions to the use of the categorical exemption as set forth in sections 15332 of state CEQA guidelines apply. 3, specify that street services, Urban Forestry Division, located at 1149 South Broadway, is custodian of the documents or other material that constitute the record of proceedings upon which the board's decision is based. And 4, review and approve the request for a fee permit for 6, not 3, but 6 coast live oak trees, so that'll be an amendment if we go there. Tree replacements are required. The only speaker cards I have on this item are from real parties in interest. So, Mr. Banuelos on number 6.
Morning, President James, Commissioners, Board Representatives, City Attorney Dr. Campos, Hector Banuelos, Streets LA, Urban Forestry Division. What we have before us is a request for a fee tree removal permit for 6 coast live oak trees at 1830 Mongo Way for construction of a single-family residence. The property measures approximately 28,000 square feet and with the steep to moderate slopes, and on a property that measures 8,137 square feet. The site inspection revealed that there are 9 coast live oaks on the property, of which 6 will require removal in order for the applicant to perform street grading and other slope stability measures as required by the Los Angeles Department of Building and Safety in order to make the slope compliant. There are 3 remaining oaks that will be retained in place during the construction, and fencing has been put up to protect the trees. If approved, the applicant shall plant 15 24-inch box size coast live oak trees and 9 24-inch box size California bay laurel trees, which are also native trees. The survival of the trees will be secured by a tree replacement bond. The 11th Council District Office, the Community Forestry Advisory Committee, and the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment were informed of the tree removal permit request, and the Council Office has taken a neutral stance on the removal request and the project. Any questions?
I'm sorry, yes. Actually, let's go to, I don't have a question yet. Let's go to, I've got 2 cards from Daryl. Is it Olasinski? Excellent. So, sir, you represent the applicant? Okay, go ahead.
My name is Daryl Olasinski. I am principal of O+L Building Projects. We're the architects responsible for the project. In 2008, a geological report was done for this property, 10 years before our office got involved with any work on this property at all. And in that geological report, it was cited that there are very drastic violations to the zoning code with respect to the number of walls and the heights of walls on this property. There are a series of walls on the north side that are over 12 feet tall, 2 of them that taper up the hill, and then on the south side there's about a 26-foot tall retaining wall that sort of cascades down the hill as it moves down. As a part of that original proposal, that original geological approval letter, geological correction letter, The first point was that the site needs to be brought into compliance. The only way to do that is to regrade the entire site. So in regrading the site, there are trees. The trees in question are on the north slope, and they're planted on 2 tiers. So imagine this is basically pad level, about 12 feet down. There's another pad, another level area, and then it goes to natural below that. All of those tiered areas have to be removed. It's unavoidable to do this. No matter what size of a project, it's irrelevant to the actual construction of the house. You can build a 200 square foot addition, or you could build a 12,000 square foot house. It doesn't matter. So we took that, and at that point, that project was abandoned because the client, the person who was pursuing that, didn't want to get into the cost of doing all of that work. And the question you need to ask yourself is, why would a developer or an owner or a builder want to spend over $1 million to make a site compliant and save trees if they're not being forced to do that? That's the question. So in 2018, our office was engaged. We re-engaged Irvine Geotechnical to reevaluate the report. The report came back. We have a geological approval letter stipulating that those provisions are still intact. And we had to redo a significant amount of processing through the city to get a geological approval letter, remedial grading approval, and here we are today. So that's the situation.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I may have some more questions for you in a moment. Mr. Benuelos? So this is the first time this item's come before the board, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. The Brentwood Community Council sent a letter with just some questions, primarily regarding they're saying they're concerned, they just say concerned, about lack of transparency regarding the intentions of the applicant, and they were wanting to be heard about some questions that they have. Have you been in communication with the Brentwood Community Council at all?
No, I have not.
Okay. Do we know if they were notified of this morning's hearing? I know that we post an agenda, and people are allowed to follow the agenda, and I know that they clearly know that this is coming before the Board of Public Works. They reference it in their letter. My concern here is that this might be fine, but they've raised some questions, and they don't have anybody here really to speak on their behalf, which might mean that there's no opposition to it. But I also will always hesitate to rule on something when we have some potential for lack of notice. I always hate when people come in and they weren't notified. That's always an unfortunate situation when that occurs with a public hearing. I know that we don't have a legal obligation to do so, but our board is always, in the time that we've been here, when we get interest from a party or a community, we always will notify them. Mr. Olasinski, do you know have you had communications with the... Okay, Mr. Olasinski has not. Okay, let me hear from Commissioner Cabello on this.
Thank you, President James. Kind of reinforcing your point, I tend to agree. I think this probably will be fine. This is likely an item I'm going to support and vote for. But Mr. Banuelos, maybe moving forward, what Streets LA can do is have the new outreach team led by Martin Schlageter notify whoever sent in letter, either in support or in opposition to a tree removal. As soon as that agenda is out, notify them that this will be a board hearing. It's just an extra step. We can figure out a way to maybe make this a more formal policy moving forward. But I think I agree with President James. It is a good idea to hear all sides, to have everybody in. It was very helpful for me today to hear the previous item, hear both the applicant and the folks opposing the permit, tree removal permit, for me to come to a decision. I didn't know what I was going to do before, and I heard both sides, and I was very certain about what I was going to do at the end of that. So I think, to be fair, for all involved, it would be wonderful if our new outreach team at Streets LA can take that extra step, notify the applicant, notify not only the applicant rather, but anybody who's written a letter in support or opposing them, and then we'll work together on a more robust, formal way to codify that as a board policy moving forward.
Yes, understood. And usually we do notify when we know there are protesters or groups in opposition of the removal request. In this case, I was kind of looking through my emails real quickly and seeing if I notified them, and wasn't able to locate that email. So it may be we may have notified, but I got to look through my emails again.
Right, which is why we maybe kind of formalize a process so that you don't have to scramble through your emails, and we know it's a box you check that it's going to be part of that process.
Yes, understood.
In this
Thank you.
instance, I see Mr. Jordan. In this instance, I'm not, and I don't think Commissioner Caberos, she can speak for herself, but I'm certainly not asking Streets LA to go create opponents out there, but we provide the notice that we're required by law to provide, and we did that here. But what we also do is when we do have a community group or anyone that surfaces ahead of time, such that their letter is part of the transmittals. Those are the ones that I do think we need to have provided notice to. And Mr. Jordan, do you have something to add, or?
Well, just to avoid a circumstance, so when the meeting, if this item gets continued and the community council is notified, and so we have a hearing and they know of it, you may also consider just letting the council office know.
Oh, always.
What I would not prefer is to have it be here again. Is the council office advised of the hearing? Oh, no. So I know you probably already do, so.
Point of clarification, I believe Street Services does that?
Yes.
You notify the council, or Streets LA rather, you notify the council office.
We notify the council office in the initial hearing, which was a week ago.
Good.
Excellent.
You already do it.
That was in the that's in the report. So what I would like to do, I don't want the applicant to have to wait forever either. So what I would recommend is today is the 13th. The 20th is heavy. The 27th. Is everybody here on the 27th? Okay. Oh, that's accessing LA. How about the 25th? Mr. Olesinski, would you be available for the hearing on the 25th? It's a Wednesday. Are you here?
Well, I have one quick question.
Yes, of course.
I was notified that there was a continuance from last week. They weren't notified that it was a continuance from last week?
I wasn't notified. This was continued?
Yeah, the first.
Oh, it says from original meeting date, Friday, September 6th.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's likely because I was out. Were they here last week? Okay, they asked for the continuance. Oh, the council office did. Hang on a minute, I wasn't here.
I can go back through my emails to check to find out who requested the continuation.
Okay, yeah, because just because I'm gone doesn't mean that we wouldn't hear it. Yeah. Happens all the time. Okay. Let me find out kind of why. Yeah, the council office likely asked for the continuance. Mr. Olesinski, your question is whether they were here.
If I was notified as the applicant, why, or if the objection wasn't notified?
Well, that's what we're trying to find out. Apparently, they weren't.
The arborist has some information as well. We would like to speak.
Sure.
I'm Lisa Smith. Smith. I'm the arborist that wrote the report, and I'm also in Brentwood. I'm also part of the Brentwood Community Council.
Okay.
I do presentations for the BCC. I'm the lead arborist for the coral trees on San Vicente and work with the president of the BCC, Michelle Bisnoff. And so I'm very familiar with this. I've read through Julie's letter. I think part of her concern was just an unfamiliarity with the whole project and the geotechnical limitations. And with that understanding, it kind of creates a moot point. And so her questions may be related to just a blanket black and white, oh, you're building, you're taking out some trees. Once you understand the geotechnical considerations on that site, it becomes a moot point. So although they may have questions and they will be addressed, or they could be addressed if they had been here, I think that it's still going to be the same answer. And I look through the lens of these guys when I write my reports. I'm very, very strict. In fact, they push the project.
That's fine. I understand that, but I've got to look through the lens of my chair. Okay, so go ahead, Mr. Banuelos.
Yes, I found a email correspondence where it was requested that the item be continued for another week, and the request came from Michelle Bisnoff, who is with the Brentwood Neighborhood Council.
Okay,
So she was aware that the item was going to be moved for another week.
Okay, and that was to today?
That was sent last week.
Was that Brentwood Neighborhood Council or Brentwood Community Council?
Community Council.
Okay, so they knew it was today.
Yes.
Can I see that, Mr. Banuelos? Okay, so Michelle Bisnoff, is that who you work with, Ms. Smith? Okay. Michelle Bisnoff did, I was copied on this email as well. I was out, of course, but we did grant the requested continuance she asked for the next meeting, but we continued it actually a week, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and she was notified, let me just make sure she was notified. I have that we did it, but I don't have on here, unless you can show it to me, that we actually notified her that we did it. Yes. So we may have continued it to her request, but didn't tell her. So she doesn't know to be here, which kind of defeats the purpose. Do you see a notice, Dr. Campos, do you have a notice?
Yes, yeah, I see it. So
Still going through emails.
Do you see a notice to Ms. Bisnoff?
I don't see a notice, but I'm going through my emails and I have hundreds of them, so give me 1 second, a couple minutes.
Then why don't we do the 20th?
I'm good with
I'm concerned about it because we didn't tell him when. Yeah.
Can we?
Yeah.
What I would recommend, President James, if you'd like, we can take a 5-minute recess just so that we can get the records straight and we can pull the records.
Yes, we're going to
from
take
the
a 5-minute recess on this and figure out the record on who was notified.
whether who was notified. Thanks.
Or wasn't. Are we back online? We are. Okay. Thank you. So thank you for the recess, everyone, and the team effort. There's a bit of teamwork, but I think, Lisa Smith, if you could come around. I think you saved the day for us on the notice issue. I just want to put it on the record with you and just a little back and forth exchange between the two of us.
Sure.
So we're back on agenda item number 6, tree removal at 1830 North Mango Way. We've determined through email communications that there was a request by the Brentwood Community Council for the continuance. That continuance was granted. They were notified that it was granted. We don't have that in an email confirmation that we found, but Ms. Smith, who's the arborist on the project, who has connection to the Brentwood Community Council, informed me that she has been in communication, text communication, which we have a record of, with Michelle
Bisnoff.
Right, and Michelle Bisnoff has indicated that they did have notice. They were seeking the report, and by seeking the report, nobody appeared today. That may have or may have not alleviated their concerns, but at any rate, they got the report and got their continuance, and they knew about the hearing today. And we don't have anybody in the room that has announced that they're from the Brentwood Community Council. And her text to you has indicated knowing that the hearing is going forward today.
Correct.
Okay.
And Mr. President, Fernando Campos, Executive Officer, I did find the actual confirmation from Michelle Bisnoff on September 5th at 2:46 p.m. where she's acknowledging the continuation for 1 week till Friday, September 13th. She indicated, thank you very much for the courtesy of the extension. It is greatly appreciated. So Michelle did acknowledge that email notification, and I have the email.
Great. All right. Thank you. So we're squared away. So now what we're going to do is have the hearing, since we have confirmed that they were notified, and my initial issue that I raised has been alleviated. Mr. Benuelos and Mr. Olesinski, regarding would you summarize for me again the replacement plan for, and do we know why we thought there were 3 Coast Live Oaks and we had to change it to 6?
It was a typo. It just, I'm not sure how that 3 got in there, but it should have been 6. It's listed on the main topic line and the subject line, and then towards the bottom on item number 4, it was listed as 3.
Okay, so Mr. Olesinski.
So we are saving 3 trees on the site. The house has literally been designed around.
A little closer to the mic.
The house. We are saving 3 trees on the site. One of them is the largest of the 3 all of the trees, and the house was actually been designed, and all retaining wall configurations have been designed around saving those trees. The situation with this particular piece of property is that there are, like as I said, there are non-compliant retaining walls, non-compliant slopes downhill from the street. The 3 trees we are saving are in the locations where we are able to save the trees. So the trees that we can save, we are. So that's the situation.
Okay.
And I think the 3 versus 6 might have been a typo on Mr. Benuelos' part as far as like saving 3 and cutting out 6.
Okay, Commissioner Cabello, go ahead, and then I've got an issue.
So just for clarification, and maybe I'm completely misunderstanding this, there were 6 Coast Live Oaks, 3 are being saved. Wait, there were 9. Okay, so 9. 3 are being saved. 6. Okay, got it. Okay, so there are 9 total Coast Live Oaks. 3 are being saved. 6 will need to be replaced.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, President. I just have a clarifying question. The reason you need to remove the 6 are because they're in this area that you need to improve in order to meet our codes.
Yes.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Now let me explain my issue, colleagues. I'm sorry to be a problem on this one, but we send out a notice for 3, and now we come in here and we're saying it's 6. And I just feel like when it's tree removals, this is an important issue to communities, and we've given public notice of 3, but now we're adding trees. And I just don't like the concept of adding trees. without proper notice to people. So what I would do here is, my gut on this would be, or my recommendation would be, to continue the item, not to have another hearing, a substantive hearing, but to give proper notice. Well, maybe we need to have another substantive hearing. I just think we ought to continue the item so that we provide proper notice that there's 6. And we can continue it a week, but we've given improper notice. And I don't like a record of putting out 3 and then actually taking out 6. That's not good.
And Mr. President,
It's a typo. Typos happen, but yes, go ahead.
Mr. President, Fernando Campos, Executive Officer, if this board were to consider continuing this item for 1 week, my recommendation would be to actually withdraw the item completely so that the Bureau of Street Services can appropriately update the record so that we can then upload the new report to the system with the correct information. If we continue the item will be continued as posted as 3 trees. So therefore, not everyone would know that the trees are being modified from 3 to 6. That's just an option. However, whatever your board would like to do, we can continue or we can withdraw.
Commissioner Cabello.
Okay, thank you, President James. I don't recommend withdrawing the item and starting from scratch, because then we have yet another hearing, that we have another item with all the notification issues that come along with it. Now, for clarification, Mr. Banuelos, can you explain on the record what is in the board report regarding the 6 versus 9 versus 3? In the board report, not on the public agenda.
It's 6 trees within the board report.
I'm sorry, one more time?
It's 6 trees are identified within the board report as being removed.
6 trees is being, so the board report is correct even though the notification is incorrect. I don't think we should be penalizing the applicant for our mistake. That's my feeling, and I'm fine moving forward today. And if we do continue, I will not oppose that. However, I do not recommend withdrawing it. I recommend continuing it, and I don't know if there is a way to be in compliance with the Brown Act to state that there is an error in the board report.
The body of the board report actually does reflect 6 trees. The title of the report, the header, does reflect 6. It's the recommendation number 4 that's not accurately described in the report.
Understood, but can we not withdraw, but continue? If I recommend we move forward, but can we continue without withdrawing and correct the record? I understand you have to agendize it a certain way based off of the Brown Act requirements, but can we correct the record as well in an added description beneath the headline?
What we can do is continue the item if this board would like, and then in the disposition, we can make an indication to the general public that this item is going to be continued for X date. In that deliberation, the board will consider 6 tree removals for both Coast Live Oaks.
I still believe we should move forward today, but I'd be fine with that. I could live with it.
And I want to hear other colleagues on that, but I'm going to just put my position on the record again now. Given what our choices are, I like that choice, Dr. Campos. I feel like I'm uncomfortable going forward today without a notice, and folks don't read the board reports first. They, in my opinion, they read the notice of agenda first, and then they'll go to the board reports. So I'm okay just continuing the item and not withdrawing it, provided that we put under here in a parenthetical that the number of trees that will be considered by the Board of Public Works is 6 trees. Somewhere in the notice, rather than a blue ink pen that we do on the morning of the hearing, it needs to say 6 trees, in my opinion. Commissioner Davis?
Well, I agree with everything that has been said, and while in fact we certainly don't want to harm the constituent, the compliance with the policy is critically important. And so to the degree that we can achieve both goals, not with standing our compliance, then certainly I support that. But we've definitely got to get it and make it clear so that we have the kind of integrity that this board has to implement on a daily basis.
And to Commissioner Cabello's point, I apologize to the applicant. We have a typo here. It happens sometimes. It doesn't happen often. It happens very, very rare, but it happened here. And we've got to put out a notice that has the number of trees. We can't be doubling the number of trees, in my opinion, during a hearing.
How much are we delaying the constituent?
I would say I'll do it as soon as anybody wants to do it.
Well, if I may, Mr. President, I think that we should, I understand we have a very lengthy item on Monday's agenda, but since we've had the public hearing, since we've had everyone who needed to be notified, we will make sure and go above and beyond and share with everyone the continuance date. I move that we move it to Monday. We just get this over with. We've already had the public hearing. We've had our public comment.
He can't be here on Monday. The applicant.
Help me help you.
One week from today. 1 week from today. 1 week from today. Yep. Okay. He's the applicant. Yeah. yeah. So 1 week from agenda item what? Yes. So that would be my motion on agenda item number 6 will be heard on the 20th. Yes, sir?
Is it possible to hear it on Monday without anyone here? I mean, I guess since the Brentwood Community Council didn't show up.
Yeah, it's just not the safest thing to do.
Understood. Okay.
May I say something also? The notifications that were sent out to the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment, the Council Office, and the Community Forestry Advisory Committee did indicate 6 trees as well.
I'm sorry.
The
That's fine.
Yes.
But that's not, I appreciate that, Hector.
Okay.
But that just means that this one should have been caught.
Yes. Understood.
And this mistake wasn't caught. This is the official public notice. I've got an official public notice that's wrong, and I'm just not going to be doubling trees without notice.
Understood.
Yeah.
And also, just for the record, I'd like Mr. Benuelos to ensure, or Dr. Campos to ensure that obviously the applicant is notified, the council office will be notified of the continuance date, the Brentwood Community Council, as well as Dunn and CFAC and everyone, to cover our bases, CCing both me and President James, just so that we have that in front of us. Everyone is on the same page. There is no question as to when the hearing will be next.
One quick question.
Yes.
Does this continuance mean that you're actually opening it up to another hearing, or what is the procedural process?
Well, yeah, I mean, they're being notified about 6 trees.
Got it.
So, yes, I mean, if public comment comes in, we're going to take public comment.
Understood.
Because we didn't provide notice. I'm sorry, but we didn't provide proper notice. It's completely on us.
Understood.
I don't know what else to do but apologize to you, and we'll try and be as expeditious as possible on the 20th. To the extent we can, we'll call your item first.
Understood. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. So that'll be the order. Dr. Campos, have we cleared the desk?
Yes, you have.
Okay, then we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.